Hey YouTube. Well, we finally started the siding and today was day one, so we just got going on getting this thing all laid out as far as its width, exposure to the weather, and rivet patterns. So we bought these sheets. This is 16 gauge 4x8. Used to be called Corten Steel, but now there's a new designation for it, 466 or whatever they call it. But it's a weathering steel, and it's 16 gauge, so that's about a 16th of an inch. It's pretty thick, so it can make it over the course of the years when the salt air tries to corrode it. So our layout, we have about 22 inches exposed to the weather on our rows, because we're cutting these sheets basically in half, so there's a couple of inches of overlap over the sheets. So as we put the sheets, we don't butt up to each other, we're overlapping them and sealing them between the sheets. So when we did our rivet pattern, we made sure that the sheets equally overlap each other and come equally to each side of the house. The bottom and the sides are almost exactly the same, so the dimension's the same, but we're basically cutting these sheets in half and overlapping it. It was 2 inches or so, a little bit more of an overlap, and that exposed 22 and a little bit of 21 and change to the weather. So, okay, by the way, we're ripping these. So we have plasma cutter with fine tips to cut, but we don't want to be so aggressive. I heat the sheet, distort the sheet. So, they make some really nice metal cutting blades today. And of course, the one thing with the metal cutting blades is you got to keep your RPMs down. So that's why we're using a worm drive. So a worm drive, its RPMs are like, here's the RPMs on the worm drive, 4,400 RPMs. So the blade we have is spec'd out to. It's a nice blade. It's made in Japan, and I think it was like 58. It's worn out, but I think it was 58 maximum RPM. So as long as you stay below the maximum RPMs that the blade's allowed, your blade will last and cut properly. If you start trying to put it in a, made in Japan, if you put it in like a regular skill saw and start trying to go, you're going to just cook the blade. So we're well below the limits of the RPMs. It's cutting really nice. It cuts, we laid down a sheet of plywood, and this is how my dad likes to do it. So we fasten a piece of straight material to another piece, so we know exactly where the edge of the blade is cutting. So then when you make your mark on your sheet where you want to cut to, you just line this sheet of the plywood up, and then the saw runs right in there as a guide, and it gets clamped down, and those sheets are getting cut right in half equally. Then we have another template that we put away, because even the air is going to start. See, with this steel, they don't put any protection on it, no mill scale, nothing. It's supposed to rust, so it just starts rusting right away. Even just exposed to the open air and moisture, it's going to start rusting. See, that edge was just open, and this is all covered. So we put the template away. It's the template we're going to use and drill out the same pattern on every sheet. Every sheet gets the same template drill pattern, because when the sheets line up to each other, even though we're staggering the joints lengthwise, the overlap's the same on the sheet, but then the staggering of the sheets, the rivet pattern is spaced equally, so all the rivets line up with each other. So when we break up the sheets, we'll break up the joints. We're going to stagger the joints. So then this is the rivet gun we're using, because we're using a, this was nice, by the way, got it on Amazon for I don't know, it's under $100, but it's a really nice gun. You don't even, it doesn't work hardly at all to pop this rivet, which is not an easy rivet to pop. You'd have a hard time popping that with a hand rivet. It's a 3/16 closed end rivet. So that means is the water can't go through the rivet. It's a self-sealing rivet. You know, I'm pretty sure the boating industry uses it on their aluminum boats, and definitely Boeing in their planes and their jets, when they use it, they're using closed-end rivets when they do their aluminum. But this is stainless. So one is a little bit longer than the other, because in certain conditions we're going through 3 pieces of that gauge, so that's 3/16. And in other conditions where the seams hit, we just go the 2, which is an 1/8. So we have 2 different size rivets. And the mandrels are stainless too, by the way. They pop really nice. And the rivet gun, you know, at 90 pounds of pressure, it just pops it no problem. So yeah, we got about 4,000 of these, and then yeah, a couple thousand of the long ones in our compressor. And anyways, there's our first sheet. That's the first sheet that we put up there. And I don't know if you can see it with the sun, but there it is, a full length of 2 foot by 8 feet. And by the way, the manufacturer of the Corten recommended a break between the Galvy and the Corten. So we're using this adhesive by Henry, which is they call it a 900, and it's a lifetime caulking. It's very nice. It's very flexible. It has a sticky consistency, almost similar to like bubble gum on a hot sidewalk. So I mean, it's very nice to work with. We're just putting a thin bead down, thin bead along the galvanized Z-bar, and I'll show you how we're doing it. But this was the first sheet. We just put it up to see how it was gonna go. And then it went up pretty easy. It wasn't very difficult to get ourselves started. So we put these sleepers across the top like that, because we're working in an upside down condition, and then we lay we put a few of them across and lay the sheet up there, and then we just lift the man lift up until it gets into place so we can adjust it, and then that's it. And I'll show you how we're going to secure it. So let me see here. So it's hard to see the way the light's hitting this. See if my phone can adjust to the lighting condition. So what happens is, these Z-bars all got a thin bead of that caulking material up there. And what we did is we queued up to the side of the building. We put stops, so then we just queued up to the side of the building. And what's going to happen later is we're going to put a 2x2 angle. Let me go up a little higher. It's one of the reasons why we left these corners off. See, this caulking's flexible. If we have to flex it down a little bit, that caulking will allow us to stretch. See, if we ran the galvanized right to the end, if there was any little imperfections in the plywood and did any kind of whammy, it wouldn't give us the adjustment that we want. We want to be able to make adjustments if we have to with that edge condition. So that's why we kept the structural pieces back. So we have a corner that we can now flex and close up tight as we can. You know, see where it's doing this? We can just actually flex that down, and that Henry material will allow us to do that because it's stretchy. And then where the sheets overlap each other, so they're going to overlap here, that's going to be that 2 and change overlap when the next sheet goes on. We put temporary speed screws in there. We'll pull these out, seal, rivet up the next sheet, and then we'll run sealant here, and then we'll finish rivet through with the finish rivets. So, but those are those closed-end rivets there, 3/16. You can see. And the reason why we put the speed screws in here temporarily for now is because a rivet's supposed to go through there. We can't put the rivet in there now because when the next sheet comes on there, the rivet's in the way. So we have sealing up underneath, and these speed screws allow us a nice seal till the sealant dries, and then later on when we're ready to put the next sheet on, when we're in that area, we take the speed screws out, put the sheet up, drill through the full 3/16 and rivet it home till and that's how it will be as it's completed. So we're using speed screws, and then there's where the rivet remains permanently. That's a temporary secure, that's permanent. So anyways, that's your first sheet. It's up there, and from here on in now we'll work off this edge. We'll run a straight edge along, and the next sheet will butt to the straight edge, and we'll cue up to our stop besides. And that's it basically. That's how the layout works. So these Z-bars are 15 3/4 on center, and we try to get these sheets oversized as far as the 8-foot length, but the manufacturer sold them in 8-foot length, so that's how we purchased them. So by setting these at 15 3/4, we gained 1.5 inches of overlap. There's 6 bays and an 8-foot run, so that gives us 6/4. That's 1.5 inches of sheet overlap. So when the next sheet comes on, it comes on and gives us 1.5 inches of overlap. And then the rivet pattern lines everything up. So this rivet pattern is typical for every piece, and that's going to line up the whole building. And if the Z-bars are where they're supposed to be, the rivets will run right down the center. Run right down the center of the Z-bar in every bay. No matter if you shift that way 2 feet or this way 4 feet, each time you come onto a contact with the Z-bar, you're dead center. That's how that works. That's how we're going to do the whole building. So this was the first piece. And then yesterday we did all the plywood up there. That's all completed. And then it's got the false beam return. That becomes steel. And then it becomes who knows what in there. Tongue and groove teak, and that just returns and runs down as wood, and then Corten comes down that wing wall and returns into the glazing. So anyways guys, that was the start. I figured I'd share how it's going so far. And you notice there is no rock wool here because there's no heated space up there, so that's why you don't see any rock wool in this area. This is where the deck is. But hopefully it makes sense. And as the sheets go up, we'll make a couple more videos and you can see how the sheets lay on there. But after these sheets hit the air and the salt air gets to them, they're all going to darken up just like the rest of the steel. So that's the look. Maintenance free, weathered steel, and that's the exterior siding. Of course, then we got to cut out for our recessed lights when we come to them. We got to drill out, and a recessed light goes in there, and that's pretty much it. Just got to cut up these sheets. Got to cut about 30 of them in half today, and start laying out for the drill pattern, and drill them all out, and then assemble them up on the building. But that's it, guys. Stay tuned. We'll show you how it's coming as far as how the building looks when it's all skinned in this Corten. And that's it for now. So till the next video.